What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. And man, we have some pretty big news on the way for the New York Giants. It's not been delivered just yet, but it feels like in the coming days, the inevitable is going to finally happen. The Giants seem like they're leaning towards benching Daniel Jones. If you didn't see it this morning, Adam Schefter, during an appearance, I think on the Pat McAfee show, said he doesn't believe that Daniel Jones will ever play another snap for the New York Giants. Breaking the chains off. We're free. Hallelujah. Finally. And also, if you're paying attention to what Brian Daboll's been saying this week, it does seem like the direction that things are heading. He has definitely changed the way that he started talking about Daniel Jones to the media. Basically, in the past, saying he gives us the best chance to win. He's our starting quarterback. We're not considering a quarterback change. Well, after Sunday's loss to the Panthers, an ugly, embarrassing one at that, he said to the media that they will evaluate everything. He did not definitively say who the starting quarterback is. He said that it's up for evaluation. And he did not say that Daniel Jones gives us the best chance to win, nor did he say that he's looking for a quarterback who gives us the best chance to win. Just said he's going to evaluate everything. So now it seems like what we're going to be looking at throughout this bye week is a quarterback battle between Tommy DeVito and Drew Lock. Who will be the starting quarterback coming out of the bye week? Very likely Drew Lock. He is the second stringer, but maybe in part of him saying, Daboll saying that this is an evaluation, he could be evaluating a potential quarterback battle between the second and third string quarterbacks for who will get the starting job coming out of the bye week. So very interesting stuff. Again, no official announcement just yet, but Joe Schoen is speaking to the media today at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will be on a flight on my way to the West Coast to California, but Alex will, of course, hit you guys back with an update later on the channel if anything super important does break out of that press conference, and we'll both have our reactions and recap tomorrow morning as well. But definitely interesting times here during the bye week, Alex. Seems like we're finally going to be freed of Daniel Jones and bad quarterback play. Well, not necessarily bad quarterback play. Can't say that there's going to be much of an improvement going from Daniel Jones to Drew Lock, but it does seem like any day now the change will be made. How are you feeling knowing that the Giants are finally considering making a change at quarterback?
Well, I want to make something very, very clear to everybody. We are not hoping for better quarterback play. We're just protecting ourselves from the injury clause that Daniel Jones has, and also just changing the chapter, flipping the page, ending this absolute terror of 6 years and very minimal progress. It's time for somebody else, anybody else. They just have to stop the bleeding, because every time Daniel Jones steps out there, he's just a punching bag at this point. I know he's not on social media, is not really watching anything, and he shouldn't be because it's not very good. But I think everyone is done. Even the last remaining supporters, the analysts, the people saying that, you know, they just need to do this, need to get in that, need to do that. It's over. Like, the time is done. The time has run out. They have to just flip the page and just move on and reset. Just like, at least show us as fans that you're ready to admit the mistake and move on. That's all we're hoping for. That's all I want, is for the Giants to say to themselves, we made a mistake extending him. You know, we don't want to go down this path anymore. We can't risk him getting hurt. The Giants are 2-7, right? Sorry, 2-8, 0-6 in the division. The season's over. It's done. There's no more saving face, right? There's no saving face anymore. There's no winning and trying to get into the postseason. It is literally dead. It's done. The season's over for us. So protect yourself from Daniel Jones's injury clause. Protect yourself from him further taking the social beating he's getting right now. And just do him a favor and bench him. Like, you're doing him as much of a favor as anybody else, because he's just going out there in MetLife to 80,000 people booing him. Right? 80,000 people booing him. Like, what is that accomplishing, right? From a general manager or head coach standpoint, what are you accomplishing by trotting out Daniel Jones, who's getting booed by an entire stadium? Everybody hates him right now. He is the punching bag. For what? What are you accomplishing? Nothing. You have to bench him, and I don't think, and look, Joe Schoen, during bye weeks, it's mandatory that GMs speak to the media during the bye week, so this isn't like a crazy random press conference. This is a scheduled press conference, but the questions are going to be obvious. Is Daniel Jones a starter? You know, where are you as an organization? And he's not going to give us anything, in my opinion. He's going to say, we're going to evaluate the position. We're going to look at all the factors. We believe you have a winning team. We're going to try and end this season on a high note. It's not the way it's going. It's going to be all the vague BS stuff we've heard for years. But the fact of the matter is that simply saying that we are evaluating the quarterback position, we're going to see what we come to decide on, is a much different message than when we heard a week ago. It's a much different message. You know, that we went from Daniel Jones is our starter, he's our guy, this is who we're putting our faith into, now we're evaluating the quarterback position after losing to the Panthers in Germany. And God, if they weren't evaluating the quarterback position, I'd be ready to fire all of them right now. At least they are finally acknowledging that the time has come to consider benching him, and I think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think important update on the timeline of events, or just a refresher on the timeline of events. A couple weeks ago when we discussed John Mara speaking to the media and saying that he still has confidence in Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, the same night that he issued that vote of confidence for his regime, he was also asked to issue a vote of confidence for Daniel Jones, and he said no comment. That pretty much told me everything that I needed to know, the direction that this thing was heading. John Mara was basically giving Daniel Jones a notice. Short leash, you've got like 3 weeks until the bye week. You better turn it up, otherwise you're benched. And here we are. He didn't really turn it up. Despite a decent performance against Washington in the second half, I mean, you can't play like that versus the league's worst team in the Carolina Panthers and expect to keep your job, especially when the owner was clearly not confident in you to begin with. I thought that was a very eye-opening moment, Alex. John Mara given a clear and obvious opportunity to say whether or not he's confident in his quarterback, chose not to say so, and of course that indicated everything that we needed to know on the team's feelings about Daniel Jones. And like I said, here we are. Now, the other part of the question is when Joe Schoen is going up there and he's being asked these questions, I'm curious to see, how does he respond to the questions about the future? Is there much of a focus on it, or does he say we're taking it week by week? I'm very curious about that, because I think this is actually a rare opportunity where he can kind of establish himself as the likely GM in 2025. If he starts giving windows of insight into 2025, I think it'll help us understand how much confidence John Mara truly does have in him. I mean, if Joe Schoen is up there and he's talking a lot about next season and protecting the future and developing their young players, to me, I'm going to interpret that as John Mara has given him some sort of reassurance that he will be here in the upcoming offseason. So that's something that I'm very curious about. I will be keeping a close eye, or rather a close ear, on what Joe Schoen has to say during the press conference about the future. But the quarterback position is going to be really interesting to evaluate for the rest of the year, because now we have to wonder, are the New York Giants going to go ahead and put in the quarterback that they think gives them the best chance to win? Or are they going to pull a fast one on us and secretly put in the guy that they think gives them the best chance to lose? Now, obviously, teams don't lose on purpose, but there are definitely ways that they can diminish their chances of winning behind a thin veil, right? And what I mean by that is Drew Lock played really poorly in that one quarter that he had versus the Philadelphia Eagles. He looked like a mess during the preseason. Tommy DeVito won 3 games last year. Can the Giants risk having Tommy DeVito win another 3 games this year? Considering they're already scouting Shedeur Sanders, they sent a contingency of scouts to Colorado practice, not a game, but practice a couple of weeks ago. The Giants are clearly thinking ahead, looking at the upcoming quarterback class, and probably knowing that they can't afford to win games down the stretch like they did last year and still draft the quarterback of their dreams. So with all that in mind, who gets to start a quarterback? Is it Drew Lock, who has struggled this season and in preseason with the Giants? Maybe he does give you the best chance to continue losing but showing a little bit more fight. Or do the Giants feel like they need to keep some jobs? Does Brian Daboll feel like he is still coaching for his job regardless of a vote of confidence? Then maybe he goes with Tommy DeVito, a quarterback he has won games with in the past. I think it's going to be a very interesting and nuanced decision. I don't think it's just as easy as you take out the first-string quarterback, you put in the second-string quarterback. I think the Giants have a lot of benefits and pros and cons to evaluate here when it comes to which quarterback will take over the starting job. And the other nuanced part of this conversation, Alex, that I really want to get your take on, because obviously you've been bringing up the injury clause in Daniel Jones' contract dating back to like March. You were one of the first guys on this, the way that I see it. But there is something specific about this injury clause that might put a wrench into the Giants' plans and maybe will rub John Mara the wrong way. And what I'm going to say is, if the Giants do bench Daniel Jones, not only do they have to keep him off of the football field, but they have to keep him out of the practice facility. And that might rub some players in the locker room the wrong way. And what I mean by that, guys, is the injury clause isn't just does he suffer a season-ending injury during a game. It's does he suffer a season-ending injury, period. Can he not pass his physical in March? So that means if he drops a weight on his foot in the training room and breaks his foot and he's not ready to run sprints by March, Giants owe him $23 million. If he's running around on the field doing a jog before practice, breaks his ankle or tears his knee again, the Giants owe him that $23 million injury guarantee. So not only can he not play going forward for the Giants, he can't practice with the Giants anymore. If they bench him, it's over. They have to make sure he's nowhere even near a practice field. How does the locker room respond to that? I think that's something very interesting to consider, and maybe it is what's been hanging over the head of the New York Giants. Maybe, I know we've interpreted this, Alex, as it looks like the defense and a lot of players have lost faith in Daniel Jones, don't try anymore because they don't believe in their quarterback. But maybe there are some guys in the locker room who do believe in him and don't believe that he should be taken out of the starting lineup. If that's the case, how are those guys going to feel once he is removed from the starting lineup and sent off to Siberia? Because he's not going to be allowed inside of the building. Why don't you just cut him at that point? Take the $750K. But that might rub players the wrong way even worse than just keeping him on the sidelines at practice. So again, I think that this could be an almost catastrophic event in the locker room. Brian Daboll needs to handle this very, very carefully. What are your thoughts on that? The fact that not only do the Giants have to keep him out of game days, but they got to keep him out of practice as well to avoid that injury clause.
Oh, he'll be inactive. If they bench Daniel Jones, he's not QB2, he's not QB3, he's literally a sideline watcher. That's what he will be. He will be an inactive player every single week, and that's what has to happen, right? Like, that's the decision you make. If you bench Daniel Jones, you don't bench Daniel Jones with the anticipation that he's going to come in and play another snap for this team. It will be his final snap. This past game might have been his final snaps with the Giants. They should be, right? He should be inactive, in jeans, in pants. The only way he can possibly get injured is off the football field, where it won't be football related and his contract won't be guaranteed. That's the only way. If he gets hurt, it's because he got hurt doing something else, right? That's the only way that this makes sense for the Giants. You bench him, it's either 0 or 100. There's no in between. Right? There's no in between. It is Drew Lock and Tommy DeVito's team now until the end of the season. And does that rub people in the locker room the wrong way? Maybe, but I mean, I think losing is a bigger factor. You know what I mean? Like, losing games rubs people the wrong way more than benching the quarterback that just led you to a 2-8 start. Ooh, who put together, I mean, Anthony, one of the worst. And the players aren't stupid. They're watching the film. They're seeing what we saw on Sunday morning. One of the worst quarterbacking performances I think we've seen from him in his career. And that was against one of the worst teams he's ever played, right? One of the worst performances in his career against one of the worst teams he's ever played. If you were a player, I watched Wan'Dale Robinson do a double take when he sailed that ball over Malik Neighbors' head in the first quarter. I watched Wan'Dale Robinson's arms flail up in the air after he failed to hit him on that flea flicker when he was wide open. I watched receivers literally just looking in the air like, where's the ball? Where is he throwing? What is he doing? You know what I mean? We're seeing the frustration. The receivers are frustrated. We see it with their physical movements on the football field, right? So I don't know what player would be upset that he's benched. I really don't. I don't know what player would sit there and say, I think he's the best option for this team to win games. I think that he should be starting because the Giants are 2-8. He's the guy that needs to help them win football games. He's the guy that needs to rally the troops. He's the guy that needs to step up in the second half of games and fight back against bad Panther teams, and he's not doing it. If there's a player on this team who can sit there and tell me that that they feel that Jones should be starting and that they can win with Jones, not only are they lying to themselves, but they're lying to us because it's not true. It's just a delusion, right? Everybody knows at this point they have to sit him, and it's just, and look, if someone believes that within that locker room, they're welcome to do that. They're welcome to believe that. But from the outside, third party, we are on the outside looking in. They're 2-8, and they are a losing team, and they are losers. And their quarterback is the most important position on the team, and he is a loser. And that's just saying it honestly. Like, I think some of the individual guys are winners. I think some of them want to be here. They want to win. They want to be great. They want to put the effort. I'm not saying this for every single person, but as a collective unit, they are a losing football team. And that is an objective truth. And the most important position on the football field for them is helping them lose. He's not doing enough to win. So if they can't acknowledge that, that's on them. We're seeing this objectively. I get it. It's a different environment in the locker room, but we know the truth. Everybody does. You move on for one reason, and it's because you need to protect yourself from his injury clause. It's 0-100. He's going to be sitting on the bench inactive every single week watching this team play because that is the type of performance that he's walked himself into, and that's just the truth.
It is all truth. Everything you said, truthful. This is the reality of the situation. I do wonder, though, like, I know that you kind of said these guys are delusional and, you know, they're fighting against themselves and they're not seeing what they need to see. But, like, how does the locker room react? I think that is going to be something curious to see. Like, obviously, after Daniel Jones gets benched, the reporters are going to ask players like Malik Nabers, Darius Slayton, and even defensive players like Captain Dexter Lawrence. They're going to ask them, how do you feel about it? And I'm very curious to see how some of these guys respond. One thing that I will say, though, Alex, I don't think the Giants lose that game versus the Panthers if Tommy DeVito is in the lineup. I honestly, I know that might piss off some guys. I know a lot of you listening are going to say, Tommy DeVito's not good. You need to stop it with this crap. Tommy DeVito isn't good, but Tommy DeVito was not afraid to throw the ball. I don't think that flea flicker turns into a sack with Tommy DeVito. I think he gets that ball and immediately just wings it downfield. Drew Lock as well. So, you know, the conversation of, does Daniel Jones give this team the best chance to win? Well, you guys saw how bad I crashed out several weeks ago, and I strongly said, no, he does not give this Giants team the best chance to win. He is holding them back, and they're losing games because of him. And I think that was proven very true in Week 10 versus the Carolina Panthers. I think that Daniel Jones did hold this team back and prevent them from securing a victory versus the worst team in the league. And I think that Brian Daboll finally recognizes that. That's why after the game he didn't say that Daniel Jones gives his team the best chance to win. Now it's just up to Brian Daboll to determine, does he want to find the quarterback who gives his team the best chance to win? Or does he want to find the quarterback who gives his team the best chance to get another quarterback? That's going to be the big, interesting question for the rest of the season. But Alex, before we wrap this thing, let's transition over to a conversation not about Brian Daboll's decision with the quarterback, but about ownership's decision with Brian Daboll. Is he on the hot seat? Is Joe Schoen on the hot seat? Should these two guys be on the hot seat? Now, obviously, we've gotten some conflicting reports. Like we saw a few weeks ago, John Mara said that he's confident in those guys. He's going to be patient. He doesn't anticipate any firings at the end of the season. But he also did say that in 2017 before they fired McAdoo. He said that in 2021 before they fired Joe Judge. He could be saying that once again and then firing again Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. Totally possible. He's a little bit bipolar and he's a little bit reactionary. At least that's the consensus around the NFL. Ian Rappaport recently pointed that out and said that those guys' jobs are not safe. Now, if you also didn't see, Giants' former really good player, Chris Canty, went on ESPN today. He's an analyst. He said that these guys should be fired effective immediately. He has no idea why they still have their jobs. And I don't necessarily feel that way. But a lot of you in the comments section certainly do. I've read your comments. A lot of you feel like Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll should have been fired 5 weeks ago. So where are we at? Where do we think we're at? So, Alex, I'm going to ask you two questions. Where do you feel like the Giants should be at with Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll? Do you think that these guys should be on the hot seat? And then, do you think that they are on the hot seat?
I mean, it's a really loaded question. Do I think that they should be on the hot seat? Yes. Because there's no way that you put this type of performance on a football field, you construct a roster like this, you commit to Daniel Jones, and you get to sit there and keep your job safely. You know what I mean? Like, that's the epitome of malpractice. You know what I mean? Like, you cannot... Anybody in any job puts this type of result on a field, put this type of result and effort into creating success and fails this miserably, deserves to be on the hot seat. And I think that is objectively true. Does that mean they weren't being fired? Well, there's a lot of context that goes into that. One, what options are available next year? You know, you and I had a good conversation about this yesterday. There is a lot of teams out there that might be turning their coaching staff over. The Giants are not one of the more attractive teams to go to right now. Why? Their roster's weak. I mean, they have some really good pieces. They're deflated. They're demoralized, right? We don't know if they're going to get a quarterback. We don't know what pick they're going to have, so that will be a big determining factor on how attractive they actually are. Not many people want to work under an ownership. And by the way, Brian Daboll said yesterday that ownership, they relay everything. They communicate every single move, every single roster change, every single lineup change to ownership. They have to get approval to bench Daniel Jones. That's not good to me. That's not good. That's not carte blanche. That is too much involvement from ownership. I mean, John Mara going in and look, I don't know how much involvement. I mean, it just could be communicating. Doesn't mean they're actually making them do anything. But I do think that's, you know, they need to have the ability to feel free to make these moves instead of feeling like they're like at all times trying to appease ownership in the moves. They need to be making winning decisions, not moves to appease ownership, right? Like there are different things there. So that does concern me, his comments. But when it comes to firing them, I'm concerned that there's not that many better options out there, right? I also would hate to see Brian Daboll, we hired him to get a young quarterback to develop, to not get the chance to develop a young quarterback. His offense is not bad. Daniel Jones, I think people really do not understand how strapped this offense is because of Daniel Jones's limitations. If they have a competent running game and a competent quarterback who can at least get through his reads, just get through his reads, that's all I'm asking. This offense is going to be head and shoulders better, right? The offensive line on paper will be better next year. They will invest more resources. Getting a rookie quarterback allows them to invest more money too. So you get another receiver, you get another offensive lineman, you get a rookie quarterback. You actually are in business now. Like, you actually have some hope there because Brian Daboll can develop quarterbacks. Daniel Jones is just not developable, if that's even a word. He can't be developed. He is so strapped, so limited, just so bad in so many ways. They cannot get the most out of him anymore. He is capped. There is nothing more they can do for Daniel Jones. But Brian Daboll, I don't think that his story is over just yet. Should he be on the hot seat? Absolutely, because what they've done this year to build a losing team. But the context being there's not that many good options to replace these guys has to be factored in. I think they get another year. I think they give them a chance to draft their quarterback and develop him. And they just have to hit on this guy, whoever it is. I mean, there's not many guys out there that I think are capable of developing a quarterback in today's NFL. Brian Daboll clearly understands the modern schematics. He clearly understands how to run an offense. We've seen flashes of it. Daniel Jones just misses the throws or doesn't throw the ball at all. We're seeing the running game with Tyron Tracy is legitimate. They have a legitimate running game right now. And they're doing it without Andrew Thomas, by the way, and they're moving offensive linemen all around again. So, you see flashes of competency. Daniel Jones is just missing the freaking throws. It's that simple. You know what I mean? So you get him a quarterback who can hit those throws. You have a good running game. This offense is going to be night and day compared to this year and next year. So I do think that they will give him another chance, but it's going to come down to the guy. Who is that quarterback? You mentioned earlier the Giants already sent a ton of scouts to look at Shedeur Sanders. Right after John Mara said they're giving the Giants another year, this front office another year. So that's interesting. I mean, they're doing their due diligence just as they did last year. They're going to do all of that research. This is part of the process. But they're going to walk away with a quarterback in this draft class. Don't get it twisted. It's just a matter of who it's going to be.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that kind of leads me to one of the points that I wanted to make. How does this regime get off of the hot seat if they are on the hot seat? And I think this is a really crucial question, Alex. Do they get off the hot seat by winning football games? Do they have to win more games throughout the stretch of the season? Well, then they're going to lose out on their quarterback and be put in a compromised position next year once again. Or do they get off the hot seat by presenting a plan for the future to ownership? And maybe that's what's happened here. Like you just said, the day after that vote of confidence saying these guys will be back in 2025 most likely, the scouts were at Colorado looking at quarterbacks. So is this potentially a situation where Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll said to ownership, we are going to probably lose a lot more games this season. We're going to have to suffer through that, and you're going to have to stick with us because we have a plan for a quarterback next year. Could that be the way that they get off the hot seat? Is that maybe why their seats are not hot? Has John Mara already given up on the season? Has he basically given them carte blanche? Has he basically said, do whatever you need to do for the rest of the year? Make sure we get a quarterback in 2025. I think that's an interesting question to ponder because for the most instances, the way that a coach and GM get themselves off of the hot seat is by winning football games. But I don't even think John Mara is dumb enough to recognize or to fail to recognize that losing games is winning at this point in the season. I think that everybody is on the same page. They need to get a quarterback in the draft. And unfortunately, winning games is going to hurt their chances of doing that. So I don't think winning games gets these guys off of the hot seat. I think the only way they get off of the hot seat and secure their jobs is by having detailed, thorough, long conversations presenting plans for the future to ownership. And that's going to happen this week during the bye. I think they're going to sit down and say, these are the quarterbacks coming out. This is how we feel about them. These are how we plan. This is how we plan on targeting these guys. However, we can't win any more games if we want to do that. It's a tough sell to ownership, but I think it's the only way to get off the hot seat because winning games isn't necessarily going to do that for you. You're basically playing a losing game if you start winning games down the stretch, which is what we saw last year with the New York Giants when these guys were on the hot seat. Now, Alex, I got to mention this. We try and see who deserves more blame. Like you were mentioning, Joe Schoen has gotten, he's made some good decisions, he's made some bad decisions. You see the potential with Daboll, but you also mentioned Daboll is handcuffed to a bad quarterback that holds back his entire offense, right? This is the problem here. If you were to fire one of these guys and keep the other, Who would you fire? Who would you keep? How do you even make that work? Because the fucked up thing here, Alex, and pardon my French, the GM made one crucial mistake that could cost him and Brian Daboll their jobs. And it's pretty unfair to Brian Daboll. Did Brian Daboll jump through hoops to make sure Daniel Jones got that contract? I highly fucking doubt it. I don't think that he was ever a huge fan of him to begin with. I think he liked coaching him and thought that he could win with him. But I think it was pretty clear this past offseason that Brian Daboll wanted a quarterback. But Joe Schoen got swindled by Daniel Jones's evil agents into signing him to that 4-year contract. That was a massive failure and fuck up from Joe Schoen that might cost Brian Daboll his job. And that's completely unfair to Daboll. So like you said, the Giants signed Daboll to see him be a quarterback whisperer, develop a talent. He hasn't even been given the opportunity to do so, and that's because his general manager failed him. His buddy, his best friend, Joe Schoen, who he works so closely with, failed him by signing Daniel Jones to that contract and failing to give him a young quarterback to develop. Not only that, but even with Daniel Jones on this contract, the Giants still had opportunities to at least throw darts on the board in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th rounds, whether that be in 2023 or 2024 draft. And Joe Schoen failed once again to give Brian Daboll a young quarterback to develop. So that's why I say it's fucked up if Brian Daboll loses his job, because he has shown flashes and he has done good work on the offensive side of the ball, gotten the most out of players who had been terrible in the past, Daniel Jones being one of them. But because this general manager failed to do his primary job of putting quality talent on the roster, especially at the most important position in all of sports, Daboll might lose his job. It's messed up. I feel bad for Daboll if he does get fired, because I don't necessarily think it's his fault. However, I will play devil's advocate here and say that there is another side of this argument. Brian Daboll has fired a defensive coordinator, or at least the defensive coordinator quit. He has fired a special teams coordinator, and he has had to demote an offensive coordinator. So one of the major components of being a head coach is putting together a quality coaching staff. He had to fire his offensive line coach as well. He has done a terrible job of that. So maybe you can't hold him accountable and fire him and hope to see a better head coach bring in a better staff. But again, have we gotten a true evaluation of this staff with this quarterback that the general manager somewhat forced upon his head coach? I don't know. And that's another thing. All of these OC, DC, special teams coordinator changes, you know what I chalk all that up to, Alex? This is a first-time regime. The Giants didn't go the seasoned, experienced veteran route like they did with Dave Gettleman. Dave Gettleman should have stepped in and had immediate impact, results, and wins, because he had been a general manager before, a general manager with the Carolina Panthers that went to a Super Bowl, lost it, but went to a Super Bowl. He should have taken this Giants team and immediately made them a playoff team. He failed to do that. Should we have expected the same from Joe Schoen, a first-time GM, and Brian Daboll, a first-time head coach? Absolutely not. This was a completely new regime. I think it does take time for these guys. And Joe Schoen has had his hits and he's had his misses. I think he's had 2 pretty bad draft classes and 1 excellent one. So do we think that he's going to go back to being bad or continue to be excellent? Who knows? I also think he's had his hits and misses in free agency. I think the trade for Darren Waller is a miss. The trade for Brian Burns is a hit. The extension of Dexter Lawrence, hit. Jermaine Illuminor, another hit. Some other signings in the past that were misses. There's a lot that goes into this. There are a lot of different details. But again, I think when you're looking at it from an objective standpoint, you have to say talented coach, an inconsistent but talented GM, first-timers, rookies, trying to do this for the first time in their careers. They deserve to have a little bit more time to figure things out. I think the first year was probably a learning year, and that's when they made that terribly crucial mistake of signing Daniel Jones to that contract. But once again, back to your point, Alex, we hired Brian Daboll to get him to develop a quarterback. And instead, what he got was a lame duck 5th-year quarterback who had never been good before in his career until he worked with Brian Daboll. That was the decision that ultimately screwed the Giants' future, was extending Daniel Jones. Had they just franchise tagged him like they should have, he would have suffered that injury most likely the same in 2023. They would have went into 2024 knowing it's quarterback or bust, right? Or a 2023 draft, rather, knowing that it's quarterback or bust. But ultimately, that's not where they went. So I think, again, it's a very nuanced conversation, and I think that that one crucial mistake might cost Brian Daboll his job, and I don't necessarily think that's fair. I am on the boat of I want to see these guys with one more year, let them draft their quarterback and develop him. But again, circling back to the beginning of my argument, how do they get off the hot seat? I'm not entirely sure, because this seems to be an ownership that requires wins to get off the hot seat. But in reality, wins are going to make this team even worse in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you bench Daniel Jones and you usher in Drew Lock and you do these things, you are accepting your fate, right? You are writing the rest of the story, and that the Giants have given up. They've waved the white flag going into Week 12, which will be after their bye, right? That's what that means. It's nothing short of that. Like, they have waved the white flag. They have coughed up the season. They are done. So what you can expect for the final 7 weeks of the season from the New York Giants is a lack of effort, right? Bad quarterback play, and probably a team coaching to just make it look competitive enough. You know what I mean? That's probably what you're seeing from the Giants. They know that they can't win these games. They know that winning these games is horrible for their future. In fact, Anthony, Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll's entire future depends on losing these games. If they win these games, they're not only going to put themselves out of range for a quarterback, but they're going to make it really hard to go up and get one because there's going to be other teams competing. They could actually end up getting fired because they win these games long term. They have to lose these games. So I'm not saying they're going to try and lose them, but I'm not expecting much effort from this team.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, though. Because if they win, they're fucked. If they lose, they might be fucked. What do you do? I don't know. I feel bad for these guys. Like, I genuinely, I feel bad, and I don't, because again, Joe Schoen fucked up signing Daniel Jones to that extension. Like, he made his bed, now he's got to sleep in it. He might have made his coffin that he has to sleep in. Totally possible. But at the same time, if they win, they're probably screwed. If they lose, they're probably screwed. It's a terrible position to be in, and I feel really bad for these guys because they have a very difficult road ahead of them throughout the rest of the season and into the offseason. But at the end of the day, so do we as Giants fans. Not only are these guys in a bad position, but we are in a bad position because of the position that they put themselves in. So, yeah, it is kind of hard to feel bad for them in that, right?
I don't feel bad for them, dude. They've made our lives miserable. 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 All of us, collectively. I don't feel bad for them for a second. We've also had to suffer the cost of consequences of their decisions. Like you said, they made their bed, now they got to sleep in it. They have to make sure they get this choice and decision right. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. There is no second chances. It is now or it is never. You have to lose these games because if you don't, you're going to end up with one of the worst quarterbacks in a weak quarterback class, and your chances of being successful slim significantly. Right? The difference between Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders and Jalen Milroe and Jackson Dart is astronomical, right? And not to say that I don't like Jalen Milroe, but he is not ready to be an NFL quarterback. He is a supreme athlete. The potential, people will look at and Anthony and I had a whole conversation about this before the episode started. Lamar Jackson, he is the epitome of like that dual threat quarterback. He is the unicorn. There are 100 quarterbacks that, just like Lamar, that did not pan out. He is the anomaly. You cannot use Lamar Jackson as a good stance to draft the Jalen Milroe because Lamar is a unicorn. They have a scheme that fits him. They have Derrick Henry. They have a defense. They've got all the pieces to build around Lamar, and they built an offense around him. Jalen Milroe needs the right coaching. He needs to improve as a passer. He needs to improve in an NFL-style offense. He does not play in one right now with Alabama. They eliminate his ability to really go through his progressions and do those things. It's really just centered around him running the football. He is not ready to be an NFL quarterback. He needs a full year of growth, if not just sitting on the bench for a year or two before they can even trust him. The Giants don't have that long to wait, guys. They don't have a year to wait for Jalen Milroe to be ready. They need a guy that's going to step in and make an impact immediately. And that's Sanders or it is Cam Ward. There's no in between. It's one of those two guys, right? So winning football games complicates the ability to actually get one of those two quarterbacks. So I think we're going to see a pretty unmotivated team the rest of the way. I think we're going to see a team that's not really coaching to win. I think we're going to see a team really coaching to just look competitive but not really win. I mean, that's kind of what they've been doing the whole year. Let's be quite honest with ourselves. But like, I don't think we're going to see much competition from this Giants team moving forward. It's going to be a grueling, ugly, tough watch the rest of the way. And God help us. Trey Lance, Cooper Rush, that game could be the game that complicates our future. But they're waving the white flag. If they bench Daniel Jones, it is, we're waving the white flag time. That's what it's going to be.
I think that's where we are. I think that's what it is. I think we've already waved the white flag. I think that's what the Giants are doing. I think that Brian Daboll's non-answer to the question about Daniel Jones being the starter is the answer. And I think that we're going to get the announcement in the coming days, maybe even today. Maybe Joe Schoen does drop the bomb at that 3 p.m. press conference while I'm on my flight over to LA. It's totally possible. But I think it's the beginning of the end. We've been saying that for a while, but it's official now. And goodbye and good riddance. That's how I'm feeling. I just can't wait to see this team make a change. And if they make changes at head coach and GM, maybe I'll agree with it. Maybe I won't. I'll evaluate it more once it becomes a reality, if it does. But honestly, right now, I'm feeling like indifferent. Either they make the move or they don't, and we got to figure this thing out one way or another. Maybe they get sent out and smacked down like that fly bothering Alex. Maybe they just keep flying around and annoying us like Daniel Jones has for 6 years. Yeah, so we'll see how it all goes. Of course, we'll continue to update you all throughout the week. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. Comment your thoughts down below. Follow us on Instagram at Fireside Giants. We'll catch you all in the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.
Perfect.